Good Up is our space to talk about those experiences in life we didn't know we all had in common. We're the after work happy hour conversation with your best friend.
You good up bad, like, hello.
The place where you bring up the hard parts of life, the ones that made you laugh, and the things that made you who you are. Because who said becoming good up wasn't a little bit uncomfortable? Stay tuned for more information about this week's episode. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Good Up podcast. I don't always, every time I start these episodes, I'll be like, should I introduce myself for the new people? But, act like you know what's fucking going on. You know who I am.
I mean, damn, that's a good question. Maybe next week we could do that.
Yeah, we could. We do have new listeners, which is a blessing. Welcome.
Thank you
to
guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Be prepared. My name is Heiza. I like to make fuck. I don't know what else to tell you. Yeah. So welcome back. I don't even know what episode this is because we record in advance. This is what, episode 3? This is episode 3.
Yes.
And today's topic I'm actually very excited about because I think it's very reflective of where Deidre and I are in life at the moment.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so today's episode is called Choosing Joy. At least it is right now, because by the time I get done editing, I might change that fuck to Choosing Motherfucking Joy.
Something petty. We're going to say something throughout this episode that's going to become the episode title. Like,
pretty much.
That's most likely going to happen.
Much, because that's who I am as a person, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, this episode is essentially about choosing fucking joy. I don't know how else to explain it. We've done an episode on being what is the word? Toxic.
Oh, the toxic positivity. Toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've done an episode about toxic positivity. And I think that it's just, what is the word I'm looking for? Excuse me, because I
think there's summer related. Yeah. Hey, first of all, let's do a little reset. First of all, y'all gonna love my good sis because she moved this weekend, and I was just telling her, like, shout out to you for being so committed, because the way I set up, I was not recording within 24 hours of moving. So shout out to Heiza for being here. That's number one. Let's do this. Let's do a fun little
my background cute, right? But if I see the rest of the room,
I'm
right
dead.
Now, there's boxes everywhere.
I'm dead.
My Beyonce shirt, finally.
I saw it when we was on FaceTime. Ollie, I was living. I was like, oh my god.
Do you know
stand
how
up?
Mad I am? Okay, wait.
I want to see.
Pose 4, bitches, because I know what's going on. All right.
Everybody knew to choose pose 4. Everybody knows to choose pose 4. Well, how was your weekend? Let's start there. How are you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. Listen, I feel so blessed because I set out to move to a house and I described the house that I wanted. I am a renter, not a buyer, bitch. Okay, some of us can't afford that shit.
It's okay. You still your bills is paid, so you rich.
Exactly. But yeah, we had been in the same house for 2 years, and it was just time. Okay,
wow, that time went by fast. I feel like y'all just moved to the
house. Exactly.
Oh my god, that house! You've been through some things in that house, honey.
Been through so much in the other house. I literally had my wedding reception in the backyard of the other house. Okay, so the house was a huge part of our lives, but also we went through some shit in our house. So it was time. It was time to move on, to be closer to work, to cut my commute down from 40 minutes, because who the fuck have time for that every day?
Yeah, that's kind of ghetto. That's very ghetto and unnecessary.
Speaking of choosing joy, bitch. So yeah, I spoke it into existence. I described the house that I wanted and the things that we needed from this house, and we find the house, and we've been here literally less than 24 hours. We did our final move yesterday, which was hectic and tiring, and my body is super sore right now, but I can't help but walk around this house and be like, yo, I feel really fucking blessed and privileged to be able to afford a place like this, but also to I hired movers with my own money.
You better come on. You grown. You adulting. That's adulting.
And it's the fact that I saved for months and did not touch my savings account because I was going to pay for movers. I used to be an impulsive shopper, impulsive spender. So the fact that I was able to do that. But anyway, I feel really blessed right now. I'm tired. I'm, like all over the place because I have work tomorrow and all of that shit. But either way, like I'm in a room with a door that I can record in. It's really dope. It's gonna be all set up cute eventually, but not right now.
No.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing all weekend. So speaking of choosing joy, this house is the joy that I chose because I want certain things out of my life that I will elaborate on later in the episode. And this is a part of it. But how was your weekend, Deidre?
Girl, my weekend was good as hell. Oh my God.
Deidre makeup done. Deidre been out today. She said she wanted back on a motorcycle. I'm like, who I was. And if y'all see me looking to the side, it's because my monitor is to my right, but my camera is in front of me. So I looking at Deidre, but I'm not looking at Deidre, which is weird. Anyway,
this weekend was lit. That's all I'm gonna say. If I could describe my weekend in a Renaissance song, it would be "Cuff It."
I could tell you were singing it when we were setting up.
I had a good weekend. I don't go out much. Y'all know I'm in this house. I'm a hermit. I've been here looking at planets on my laptop and feeding the boss and walking the puppies. And, I just be running just day-to-day shit, right? And then this weekend, me and Chantel, shout out to Chantel. Me and Chantel went out and we had a good ass fucking time. We would turn the fuck up. And it was so short and sweet. It wasn't even like an all-nighter. Like I was home by like 2:00, but we had so much fun. Oh my God.
That's amazing.
And I drank and I was buzzed, but not like wasted. And the next day I felt totally fine, which has been rare for me these days because lately, every time I even smell alcohol, I don't feel sick. So the fact that I was able to go out and like drink and take shots and then feel fine the next day. And then my friend just picked me up and threw me on the back of his bike. So that was lit. It's a vibe. It's a vibe. I had a good weekend and it's giving choosing joy.
It is literally giving choosing joy. But you know what I love about it though is that a couple of months ago, I want to say last season, we were talking about like us staying at home like more often than not. And because we love our house and like our social lives kind of dwindling as a result of that, and you wanting to like rebuild your social life where you live now. And so I love to see it. When I saw, because you posted on your Instagram story, I had see like you out, I was like, oh, look at Deidre, she out. I was so excited.
I feel like that's how everybody felt because I don't be nowhere. Like I'll be at work, I'll be at home, but that shit gets lonely. And and that's the thing, right? Because I enjoy my company and because I enjoy my family, it doesn't feel lonely. But what it does feel like is like an emptiness that you can't pinpoint until you act. Because I would find myself frustrated and being like, I love my life. I'm happy, but why? What is this void that I'm feeling? Like, what is going on? What is this random unhappiness that I'm feeling? And I just needed to fucking go out and socialize and do something that didn't involve responsibility. So shout out to that.
Exactly. I love that. So, well, thank you for that, like for jumping in and starting us with a reflection of our weekend because it's allowing me to like reset and get to the topic. Yeah, honestly, y'all, I appreciate Deidre because my brain right now, listen. But anyway, so choosing joy. So the reason I again thought of this episode is because we've done an episode on toxic positivity and we kind of talked about how sometimes people are positive to the point where it's not considerate of people's feelings.
Yes.
And it's not allowing you to be like an empathetic friend. But this episode is more about making sure that you are not harping on negativity and making sure that you are actively choosing joy in your life, right? Because sometimes joy shows up organically and sometimes you have to go seek that fucking joy to just be like, hey, I never, when you want to come see me. So essentially the reason I have started actively choosing joy is a result of the pandemic. In episode 1, we talked about the pandemic briefly. We talked about how it affected our lives, how this was like a collective trauma that we all experienced, but we didn't really have a release from it And how like beautiful Renaissance, the album by Beyonce, was, because we were able to like choose joy and dance and like feel really good. So I wanted to continue having that conversation because I thought that was really important. And I think for me, it's very reflective of my personal journey right now. So the first question I want to start with is, for you, how did the pandemic personally affect you on like an emotional and psychological level? Because I think as far as life-wise, it affected everybody differently, but I think we all for sure experienced some level of like emotional, I guess, trauma because of the pandemic.
Yeah. You know, if anything, I feel like what the pandemic did was it forced me to stop running from my feelings, if that makes sense. The pandemic made me realize that I used to escape from things that were unpleasant in like projects and just my responsibilities, you know. So I'll never forget, and this was early in the pandemic too, but I remember initially, at least in my city, it started with them saying school was closed for a week. And I remember initially just being very, very annoyed because I'm like, the time that the kid is usually in school is usually the time I'm running errands. What do y'all mean? Like, what are you talking about? And I was in the middle of decorating my home. So I had just gotten done decorating my living room. And for me, decorating is not just buying a couple things and hanging it up. I'm painting walls, I'm building furniture, I'm doing heavy lifting. So I had just gotten done with the living room and I was moving into my bedroom, and I had to go to Home Depot. I had my little errands to run. So I couldn't do that if the kid is at home, right? And he was virtually learning. So I can't leave him home alone. He was in kindergarten, you know? And so I remember initially just being very annoyed and just kind of having an attitude about it. Like, this is an inconvenience. But then I had to stop and face myself and say, Deidre, you're being a fucking brat. Like, this shit is not even scaring your income. Like, I had to really sit with myself and say, Deidre, you having to stay home, it's not costing you money. If anything, it's saving you money because you're not going out spending your money on dumb shit. You know what I mean? So I kind of realized that I was being spoiled. But then as time continued to go on, like as the weeks kind of kept coming in and the school kept sending emails saying, we're actually extending for another week. We're extending for 2 weeks. We're extending for the rest of the month. As that time continued to go on, I found myself not being able to run from my feelings anymore. And I would be randomly in a fucking bed crying, right? I'm like, bitch, why are you crying? And then I'm realizing that something very minor triggered me, but what it triggered was very deep emotions that I had to face and I had to heal. So in that regard, it was uncomfortable in the moment, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, to be honest. That's like that's the best way I could say it.
Yeah, I mean I feel a mix of things about the pandemic too, because so much has happened in my friggin' life from February 2020 to now, right? Because
you went and got a whole husband.
Yeah, I got engaged and married within the pandemic, which is crazy. But aside from that, just like a bunch of life changes, career changes, just so much happened. And keeping in mind that a pandemic for so many like is still ongoing, right? COVID didn't go away. The shit is still here. But I think for me, the pandemic and being at home more often made me kind of, like you said, sit with myself. And a lot of the things that I was actually unhappy with about my life started to become more obvious because I had more time to think about them. I wasn't going, and let's create content, and let's do this, and let's go to work, and let's go to this event. Right. It was like, okay, I'm here. I actually don't like to create content, maybe. Like, all these realizations start happening about like, wow, this thing actually, and I'm going to use the word joy here because it was like a realization of this thing does not bring me joy.
Yes.
Why doesn't it make me happy anymore? Did it even make me happy in the first place? Yeah, did it ever make me happy? So I literally like started having this just crisis, identity crisis. And for those of you who I just say astro bitches, I don't know what Deidre calls them, but I just say astro bitches. For astro bitches like me, I was like, okay, I'm 28 at the time when the pandemic started.
Yeah.
Or I was turning 28, and I'm like, okay, this is around the time when Saturn
return, yeah.
the return to Pahishi fucking belong. So
Saturn is he.
Saturn is a he. Okay, so he was wilding. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so this is my Saturn return. So this is normal. Like, I'm going through this phase in my life where I don't know what the fuck I want or who the fuck I am or anything about myself anymore.
Yeah.
And long story short, because if I go into all of the details of everything I discovered about myself during that time, this episode gonna be 87 minutes long. But essentially what came of that was that in order for me to get through that phase of my life and find the new things that make me happy or the new things that bring me joy, I had to choose joy. Like, I had to shift the way that I thought about life, and I had to shift the way that I approach setting goals for myself and all of that stuff. And I said some of it in episode 1 where I was like, I no longer chase accomplishments, I'm chasing a feeling. Like, I'm chasing the fact that I want to feel a certain way.
Yes.
So that's, for me, that's essentially where choosing joy came from. But one thing that I have noticed is that on social media, a lot of other women and people in general, but especially Black women, are actively choosing joy in their lives, and then are kind of publicizing it as a form of content, which I don't always agree with. But
I was just gonna say, I wonder how much of it, like, I this is just my personal concern, because hey Isaac, I've been very transparent on this show about my how difficult it is for me to fully engulf myself into being a content creator, because I just wonder if, like, yeah, you're saying that you're choosing joy, but you're turning it into content, which looks like work. And are you able to still maintain that joy while turning it into content? Because if you don't get the perfect shot, are you gonna be okay with, well, I missed this opportunity for a good shot, but at least I'm still choosing joy? Does that make sense? Like, yeah. Where do you draw the line? At least in my opinion.
No, I honestly feel the same way too. I think on one end, people can be very genuine with content creation, right? I think content creation has its purpose. I think for so many of us, content creation has exposed us to new ways to live life, has exposed us to words that we didn't know the meaning for. Like, for example, there are so many women who, because of content creators on TikTok, discovered that the things that we have been living with are actually symptoms of ADHD that we weren't diagnosed for, because it's harder to diagnose girls than it is boys. So many of us, there's like a ADHD gang of like, oh, that's ADHD, like, and it's not even self-diagnosing. Like, we just did not have the tools or the resources to understand what we were going through, right? Which is fair. But then on the other side, I could speak to that struggle of like, you're so into content creation that everything becomes content, right? To the point where you aren't living your life to live it or to feel it or to experience it. You're living it for the purpose of creating your next piece of content, right? And there are a lot of creators now who are taking essentially this self-realization that came from the pandemic and turning that into a vlog or TikTok content. And good for you, make your money. But at the same time, a part of me is like, okay, but as it relates to self-care and choosing joy and experiencing joy in your life, I don't know that that should be content.
I don't know that it's possible, to be honest. Like, because then what's happening is you're not living in the moment, which is
exactly
a requirement
like
for
exactly.
Like Olia, me going on a motorcycle, it was so spur of the moment. Papa just hit me up and was like, hey, you home? I'm like, yeah. He like, you want to come on a bike? I'm like, hell fucking yeah. We dipped. You know, imagine me being like, oh, let me find the perfect outfit. Wait, how am I going to prop my phone up? No, I'm getting on this motherfucking bike. You know what I mean? And we'll talk about it later on the podcast. But I just find myself wondering how you can truly enjoy something, right? Anything you're doing, if everything you do has to turn into content. You know, and I get it. It's not, and I'm not the authority to decide like who's truly choosing joy and who's not, right? Because it's their life. What they eat don't make me shit.
Exactly. And like, what if your joy is content creation and you genuinely love making this shit and this is the joy you choose, and that's fair.
Yeah.
But I think something I would especially like to point out, because this has been a point of debate for a lot of people on social media. Why am I stuttering today? So as a result of all of this new like self-care content, there have been a lot of people using terms like luxury, so like luxury life, soft girl life, soft life.
Don't even get me started on the soft life girls.
All of that good stuff. So, and essentially, from what, because I went and I looked at different videos to understand, because I didn't know what soft life was, right? And one thing about me, I don't like to knock shit unless I try to fully understand what people are talking about. So went and looked at it, and essentially soft life and all of this luxury content and all of this self-care content, at its core, it is trying to live a life of ease and trying to live a life where you are choosing joy and choosing joyful feelings and all of that good stuff, and you are not living a life where you're constantly working or constantly struggling. Fair. But I think that the way it's being presented is in a very
shallow,
unrealistic way. Like,
yes,
because it involves, for a lot of these content creators, spending money that a lot of people don't have right now.
Yep.
It involves, for some of these content creators, I heard somebody describing soft life as, oh, the fact that I can work remotely is soft life. Like, that's an example of how I'm living it. And I'm like, well, you are living that way because you have the privilege of a job that allows you to work remotely.
Exactly.
That's not you adhering to this like theoretical way of living. Like, that's your ability to do it. And again, from what I've heard, soft life is supposed to be within your scope of what you could do, right? Fair. But I feel like this is another way of commodifying joy. Like,
absolutely. And I feel like everything essentially
self-care.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like everything kind of turns into just that. And it always ends up looking the same way, especially once it becomes like a social media wave. It always looks like the aesthetic girlies. And it somehow always ends up leading back to luxury talk, in my opinion, right? Because somewhere along the lines, like, luxury talk became a thing, right? And I think it's very cute. I fucks with it. But I feel like somehow the luxury girls took over soft life. And from what I understand about the whole soft life movement, from what I understand, it originated somewhere in Africa, I think like South Africa or West Africa. I don't remember exactly where. But the whole point was just that, to live a stress-free life. And even when things come up that would take you to a very stressed state, you have the tools, especially like mentally, to be able to navigate that and not let it ruin your day, like ruin your life, right? From what I understand, it involves truly living a life, like you said, of ease. And even if you do have like a 9 to 5 or whatever the case may be, it's understanding that this job is not the only thing going on in your life. And if you need a rest, baby, rest. You know what I mean? It kind of gets frustrating to go online and see, one thing that really kind of frustrated me with this whole soft life thing is how somehow it turned into something that's only attainable for people with husbands or people with a partner.
Listen,
somewhere along the line, the women with I don't want to say the feminine movement girlies, but it's somehow kind of turned into this thing of women trying to find a partner to provide a soft life for them. And I'm like, honey, it's kind of a within thing, at least in my opinion. Like, I work a very ghetto job that I despise, right? But I have my business that I love, and I have my family that I love. And sometimes I'm juggling too much, but I have the ability to recognize when I need rest and to prioritize that rest. That's living a soft life. That's recognizing something is happening that's causing me to be uneasy in my body. I don't like that. I need to take a step back from that. I don't hesitate to call out. And granted, it doesn't happen often, ironically enough. But if I know I need a mental health day, I'm calling out. And I'm not even blinking an eye. I'm not even like, I don't care.
It's really, that's all it is, right? Like, it's I'm saying on this episode, choosing joy. The girls on TikTok are saying soft life. Some of them 2 months ago were saying black girl luxury. Like they were creating luxury content. When the pandemic first started, people were talking about self-care. Essentially, all of this language is people seeking this feeling of joy, this feeling of rest, this feeling of contentment with their lives. And the reason that we're all seeking that is because we're all burnt the fuck out. Let's be honest. Like the pandemic, the reason all of this is coming to the forefront and why I touched on the pandemic in the beginning is because what the pandemic made us realize by sitting at home for 3 weeks or not being able to just go and be up and about like we usually are is like, oh, my body needed to rest. And oh, me actually staying here for a couple of days longer than I usually would on a regular basis has allowed me to be in a better mood. And me not being in a crowded place, I'm realizing like, oh, I don't like crowds in general. It wasn't even just because of COVID. I don't like that shit. Like, or for me, again, oh, I actually don't like creating content that much. Well, maybe not this type of content. I don't like Instagram that much because it makes me very self-conscious and very a bunch of other shit. But like again, the pandemic was like a big force for all of us, pushing us towards this realization. And essentially what so many of us are realizing is that like we want to continue feeling that feeling. We want to continue not experiencing life in such a very tough, hard fucking way. So we're trying to choose joy. So what the fuck does that look like when someone says, oh, well, now I want to choose joy? What do I do? What would be your advice to that person? Like, how do you start choosing joy?
You know, a good start would be to sit and be reflective and think of the times in your life when you felt joy, right? Or even what does joy mean to me? Or just, and I think it's easy to manifest a feeling when you know what it's coming from. So if you sit back and you really think back on times in your life that you truly felt good, you felt happy, you felt joy, right? And then you say, okay, how do I create that moving forward? And I think the next step after kind of doing like an inventory of the times you felt joy before, think about when was the most recent time you felt joy. And if you have a hard time finding it, baby, you better get that motherfucking axe because you got to start figuring out a way to cut shit out of your life, right? If you find that the times that you feel joy or that if you're finding that it's really difficult to think of the last time you felt joy, then okay, when you do have the soonest memory that you can, dig up, then you think about who was a part of that aside from you. You know what I mean? And also what's getting in the way of it. Because sometimes it's just us, right? Actually, most times it's just us because we have control over our lives. Like the end of the day, like we have to recognize like, you know what? Yeah, this person, I may be arguing with them a lot, but I'm still in their life. Like we can't just say, oh, I haven't felt joy in a year because my baby daddy been tripping. Well, why he's still in your life?
Right. If Johnny get 2 apples and one of them apples is your baby father, how about like, please?
Okay. So I think that would be a good start. I think I think that would be a good start.
So essentially what you're saying is like take an audit of your life.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
If you worked for a company and that company said, hey, we getting audited, essentially what that means is, yo, somebody peep shit and realize that shit ain't walking, and now we gotta pull all these receipts to make sure that wherever areas the shit ain't walking get fixed, right? Essentially, that is what you need to do with your life. Ain't nobody saying like Beyonce quit your 9 to 5.
I'm not saying that. I never said that.
Right? We all need income. It's not always a 2-step process. Like sometimes I think the content creators make it seem. It's sometimes a year plus long
absolutely
process
absolutely
of
absolutely
joy. It's more of changing habits in your life, or again removing certain people from your life, so that over time your life in general is able to produce that type of joy and contentment for you, right? So yeah, go ahead. You were gonna say something.
No, I don't even remember, but I feel like that's the best way I would be able to answer that. Like if somebody walked up to me right now, or if one of my clients, for instance, was like, you know, Deidre, I heard the podcast and how would you encourage me to choose joy? That's what I would tell them to do. Like do an audit of what your life has looked like. Think about the last time you truly felt joy. And if, you know, I would give them those steps and then go from there. And I would say once you are able to identify that, like that feeling of joy, then think about the things that tend to bring you joy. Even outside of the times where you felt joy, think about what in your life does bring you joy. Exactly. And if you have a hard time pinpointing it, then it's time to start getting to know yourself. It's time to start getting to know yourself. You know what I mean? Take yourself out. Spend time with just you, because that's the real tea. Sometimes we get so distracted feeling like things that are supposed to bring us joy or make us feel good have to involve other people. And it always distracts us from us and from who we are. So maybe start spending some time by yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So and ask yourself why more often.
Hell yeah.
Is why was said. So like along with taking an audit of your life and kind of taking, like, you know, gauging like, okay, this thing makes me feel good, this thing doesn't. Ask yourself why more often. Like, why do I do this thing? So for me, a big part of it was like, I still have this habit, I'm trying to work on it, but I was spending really long days at work, right? I would force myself to like finish everything I needed to do in one day, because me feeling like I hadn't completed things when I left would make me anxious, and then I would come back to work the next day anxious, right? And I was like, why am I busting my ass? I literally sit there one day, I was like, why am I busting my ass to finish all these things when nobody gonna fucking die if I don't do them? Like,
exactly.
I gonna come back tomorrow and it's going to be done. Given, yes, there are certain things that need to be done that day and have priority over others, but like I was treating everything like it was urgent, right? And what brought me to ask